Call the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, this is a very, very short bill, and the Labor Party will be supporting the bill because we are hosting in February, March next year the Cricket World Cup, and we are hosting in May, June the FIFA Under-16 World Cup. We know that there is a growing problem with match fixing. Match fixing is utterly unacceptable. It's unacceptable because it breaches the fundamental sporting code that sporting contests should be fair and the result should genuinely reflect which side is the superior side in terms of its sporting skills. And we know that we have to deal with it because this is much more than just sport. Match fixing is a critical form of fraud and crime which is growing in the world. We've known, of course, for about 6 years that we are hosting the International Cricket Club, and what worries me about this bill is, despite its shortness, just 4 clauses, it appears to have been drafted in some haste to the extent that the Legislation Advisory Committee took one look at it, and it's only just over a page, and said there is a major problem with this bill. This bill creates a defence that would defeat its own purpose. And really, the question that we asked in the committee stages of this bill, which were never answered, was how could a fundamental mistake of that nature be made? The Legislation Advisory Council also raised concerns that it might not capture the masterminds of match fixing because the actual manipulation of the overall result is an essential element of the offence. So there were some concerns with the apparent rush in drafting, but there were also concerns of this nature, and these were spelt out, sir, in the regulatory impact statement. It said that because the World Cup was being held in February next year, this objective imposes constraints on the range of legislative options that can be considered. Requiring a bill to be passed by the end of 2014, and we're right at the tail end of it now, means creating comprehensive standalone and potentially complex match-fixing legislation is impractical. We can't have that, the regulatory impact statement says, because of significant time constraints. And the other question we asked at committee, sir, was, when we have known for 9 years that we are hosting this competition, how could there possibly have been significant time constraints? Are we dealing with a bill that is a second-rate bill that doesn't do the whole job, as the government's own regulatory impact statement suggests, because the government left its run too late? And if it left it too late, sir, why? This government has had 6 years to address the problem and has not done so. Sir, the concerns that we have that there is clear evidence that global criminal activity concerning corrupt sports betting is increasing. It's increasing particularly because of the growth of online betting, and Interpol suggests that fraudulent sports betting actually generates about, now this figure will surprise you, $140 billion US in turnover in a year. Let me repeat that, $140 billion generated by fraudulent sports betting. And unfortunately, 2 of the codes where match fixing is quite common are, of course, cricket, and we've had our own experience of that with our own cricket players being involved or allegedly involved in it. We've seen it across the Tasman in Australia. When you look at the risk assessments, it shows that Australasia, because the cricket match is being held on both sides of the Tasman, is at risk from international crime syndicates looking at expanding their current operations in Asia, India and Europe. The Australian Crime Commission's February 2013 report on organised crime and drugs in sport highlighted the links between Australian sport and organised crime, including match-fixing risks. Now, again, sir, I have this problem with the bill and the government's comments on it. They said having a really short bill is proportionate to the risk. Now, on one hand, they tell us that this is a crime that generates 140 billion US dollars a year, and then they say they can't do it comprehensively, they can just do a short bill, and then they say this short bill that isn't comprehensive is proportionate to the risk. And something doesn't add up in that explanation. It really doesn't add up. The other concern that I have, sir, is that, passing legislation to stop match fixing and creating a criminal penalty for it, yes, I agree that needs to be done, but it's not the whole picture. And clearly what we need is a sporting code of conduct, and we need a sporting code of conduct in each of the major sporting areas that are mutually consistent and that are consistent with this legislation. But regrettably at the Select Committee, we never heard from the sporting organisations. We did not get a clear picture of whether these codes of conduct are adequate and will be in place and will do the job. I remember that one of the comments that were made at the Select Committee, Mr. Speaker, was that more effective than a criminal code would be a lifetime ban by sporting bodies in disincentivising match fixing. And I would like to be certain, and I would like assurance that these codes of conduct will be in place, will be consistent with this legislation, and will be sufficiently effective. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, we do need a piece of legislation that makes a specific offence called match fixing under the Crimes Act. We need everybody in New Zealand to know that it is a crime to rig a match for the purpose of making money. That's why Labor has been cooperative in helping pass this bill. But I reiterate that it is not good enough if you've had years and years to prepare for that, and the government's own agency said they couldn't look at doing something comprehensively because of time constraints. That is not a justifiable reason for a bill that probably in a perfect world might have been more comprehensive and gone further.